Yeah, I met all you guys. I'm Emma. I'm the Wildlife Champions assistant. And yeah, thanks so much for being here. This is a how to write a funding bid workshop. Hopefully it'll be helpful to kind of your projects, your ideas. Want it to be all about kind of your questions and what you can get out of this. So yeah, thanks so much for being here this evening. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, I'm Sam. I've worked at the Trust for quite a long time, 22 years, and I've been doing grant fundraising at the Trust in all that time. But I do have, other experience as well, doing research for other environmental organisations on funding prospects. And I also was a active PTA member, Parent Teachers Association, which was probably more stressful, actually. And I've been writing bids and doing impact reporting as well for across the whole range of stuff that we do. So, ranging from conservation projects to well-being in nature, which was focused on mental health, and our wonderful sites like Grow Wilder, where we do a lot of wildlife-friendly food growing and so on. How about Emma next? Emma Young.
Yeah. Hi there, I'm Emma Young. I've been to a few of these wildlife champion events now. I help run a permaculture garden in Thornbury. We've only been going 18 months. We were successful in receiving 2 small grant amounts for a sensory garden that we've just started, and now probably about halfway through. But it'd be interesting to know how to, for any next projects, how to apply for them, and like you said, the correct wording and what they're looking for. So
Great.
Yeah, right. I shall suggest the boys in Bristol next.
Hi there, we are boys in Bristol. My name is Karol, and we are proudly wildlife champions for BS5. And at the moment, we are doing a big project called the Bristol Parks Project, which we actually doing some for, but we are always in ways to get grants and support from government. So, pleasure.
Okay. Luke, would you like to say?
Hi, my name's Luke. I am South Bristol based, so BS13, and I run Friends of Withywood Park and Friends of Wilmot Park. I'm involved with the Huckcliffe and Withywood Community Development Plan. Obviously, I'm a wildlife champion, and the project is to try and make green corridors through Withywood Park, Wilmot Park, and Valley Walk, and hopefully connect them to places like Crocs Bottom and the western and northern slopes.
Great. Ria.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Perfect. I'm Ria, I'm new to the Trust. I joined 4 weeks ago, and I'm a new Next Door Nature community organiser. So I don't know if Emma might have talked about Ty, but she's the Bristol community organiser, and I cover the Summer Valley area, which is around Midsummer Norton, Radstock.
Great.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really nice to hear kind of what everyone's doing.
Yes.
So I'll hand over to you, Sam, just
Okay.
explain a bit more about what's going to happen this evening.
All right. Well, we are a small but perfectly formed group. And also we haven't run this slide pack by anybody or done a workshop quite like this yet. So you are our guinea pigs. So your feedback afterwards would be really helpful. So that when we put information on the website, we're putting the most useful stuff on there. But also if we do run another one in the future, that we can make it better if we can. So what I have prepared some slides, but actually, which I will go through quite quickly, but with breaks so that we can have more of a chat, because the best outcome from this session will be that you who are out there wanting to get money for your wonderful project feel like you've had your questions answered, or you've had the chance to explore that. So I'll just start. So I will just get the slides up for now. There we go. So this is our workshop. The first thing, so the purpose of this is to kind of help you. So I thought I would quickly just highlight some of the resources that are already available on our website. The link is there. I'm fairly sure that you've probably had a look at that, and it's quite easy to find. And then I'm going to run through a few general principles about doing funding bids, and then we can look at some examples. So I've got a couple that we can have a quick look at, but it'd be really great to hear about the Bristol Parks Project as well, which is a community crowdfunding thing. I've kind of put questions at the end, but like I say, I think we'll chop it up a bit and make it more of a discussion so that we get the most out of that. So some general, just coming back to what's on the website. So what is actually there? It does take you through the whole process of setting up local groups, which is really helpful, but I'm imagining that you're all a bit beyond that stage. There are some good resources around what you need to do before you start looking for funders. What questions do you need to ask yourselves? Emma, you've already had a couple of successful bids, so you've already gone through that process, but I think it's quite important to know exactly what it is you want to do before you start looking at the funding sources, because it's quite easy to be, swayed or led by an exciting prospect of getting some money in. So it's the basics it's the what, why, how, where, and when, and also importantly how much it's going to cost. So if I'm doing a funding bid at the trust, I always like to start with a budget. So because whether if you can sort of list all your activities and how much they'll cost, whether you need to get people in to help do things, whether it's equipment or training or whatever it is, that's really going to determine what funding pots you can go to. So that is always a starting point for me. And again, there are resources on there that help you sort of prepare to make sure you've got all the information that you might need for any funding bids, which might depend on the kind of group you are. So it's things like, have you got bank statements, have you got insurance, have you got a constitution, if that's relevant, if you're set up as that kind of a group. So it's things like that. So local groups can vary from an unincorporated association, which is a small group of volunteers with no real sort of overheads, to a registered charity like ourselves with employees, and we own assets and that kind of thing. I can't say enough how great the resources are on the Team Wilder page, though, because there are some links to kind of some blogs and some videos. There's a really great NCVO, which is the national something of volunteer organisations, which takes you through a lot of tips on how to get ready and how to do funding bids. So there's a lot on there, and we'll just have a look at a few of those points as we go through. And also, I think on there are some things that are represented in a different way. So some, like the videos, are great because it's a different presentation of and a different way of accessing that information. So I'm just going to go through a few general principles, and we'll have a look at a couple of examples of things that I've included in Wildlife Trust bids, and then I think it'd be nice then to open it out and sort of get your burning questions. So there are some do's and don'ts. Probably one of the most important of these is to check that you and your project are eligible. So when it comes to you, does the funder support your type of group? For example, if you're an unincorporated association, some charitable trusts might not fund you, but community foundations such as the Quartet Foundation will fund you. That's on our website. That's one of the funding sources. There are some ways around it. If for example, you could get another organisation to submit the application for you. And at the past, we have done that at the trust for a few groups in the past. So also your project, do they fund community projects? Are you in the right place? Are there lower and upper limits to your grant amounts? So another example there would be the Awards for All fund, which again is on our website. So they will fund projects, for example, with a lower limit of £300 all the way up to £10,000. So, you know, it's making sure that what your project fits within those kind of limits. Can you deliver within their time scale, and are you meeting their priorities? Top tip on there, check exclusions. One of the things that commonly happens to me is that I get really excited. There's a brilliant fund. It's perfect for what I want to do. I read all the way through it, and then right at the bottom in very, very small writing, it will say something like no unsolicited applications, which means that you can't just apply to them. You have to get someone to recommend you, or there'll be some other little thing. So it's really worth being very thorough when you're going through these the criteria for these funders, so that you don't waste a lot of time. Contact the funder before applying. Most funders really want to talk to you, and that can also save you a lot of time, and it gets you in their head. So, you know, if they've had a conversation with you, you know, they're more likely to remember that application when it turns up. And, you know, it can make a difference between you know, it being successful or not. Another top tip there, look at what funders have supported before. So if you want to do a tree planting project, you know, if they've funded that before, it's pretty likely they would still be interested. You know, so there's a lot of funders have websites that you can go on. If not, if you Google them, you might bring up the sort of charity commission page, and you can have maybe a look at their accounts, or it might say some information about the kind of things they've supported before. So create your own summary to start off with, so that you've got something that you can adapt. Sometimes call this an elevator pitch, and the reason why we call it that is because it's the idea that if you're stuck in a lift with a millionaire and you have that opportunity to tell them about your project, what would you say to them in that minute or 2 minutes that would really get that project across and make them give you the money? So that's quite a good thing to do at the beginning, because, you know, you've got that succinct, this is what we want to do, this is why we need the money. And then obviously you will do other things and create other materials, but it's really good to have that summary at the beginning. Some of these are very obvious, so answer questions clearly. You're all very passionate and keen, but maybe try not to get too carried away. So, and be a little bit objective, evidence what you're saying, rather than saying, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. Why is it fantastic? Why is it effective? You know, things like that. So it's as a kind of trying to keep level-headed about your wonderful little baby. Be positive and firm. It's better to say we will do something than we will try and do something. Make sure you understand outcomes and outputs, which I'll come on to in a minute. So I've got an example of what those are. Use funder keywords if you can. So these might be things like community cohesion, added value, community consultation, and also paying attention to word counts if that's relevant. And just, you know, make sure you gather evidence of why your community wants to do the project, why it's needed, quotes, feedback, photos, maybe get people to write letters of support to say that they support you doing that particular activity. And last but not least, get someone else to proofread. Have you got all the information that you need to send? Have you answered all the questions? Do all your figures match up? And, you know, things like that. It's just someone else, because when you've looked at something for a while, you know, you get a little bit sort of snowblind. So it's just making sure that, you know, all those things have been sort of checked by someone else. And I'm just going to look very quickly at Grow Wilder, and then we can perhaps open it out to any questions that you have. So before we move on, so this is, I don't know how easily you can see this, but this is an application. Well, this page is a front sheet. So this is a summary page about our Grow Wilder engagement hub. So what I have done there is literally one paragraph at the top, which says, you know, what the site is, how it came about, and what it aims to do. And then what do we do there in plain English? And then, so there's a section on about growing on the land and all the activities that we do about growing. And then there's all the stuff underneath, which is about people and the things that we do about people. Also, there's a few quotes there, which is, this is from our project. So if you've got things like that, that's absolutely brilliant to show support for what you're trying to do. Top tip again, if you can, and if you want to, you could use an online package like Canva. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that, but you can just go onto that, and they've got lots of templates. You can create your own template to make it look attractive. I mean, I do things in a bit of an old-fashioned way, and I text in, and I've got text boxes and lay it out like that. But Canva can be really useful if you want to do something like that. So I mentioned a minute ago outputs and outcomes. This sounds really basic, but I just want to check that everybody understands the difference. Is anybody willing to say what they think outputs and outcomes are? It doesn't matter if you don't want to say, but I can run through an example. Okay, I shall move on here. So this is quite important because quite a lot of application forms ask you to state outputs and outcomes, and it's very easy to kind of blur them. And so I think it's useful really understanding what these are. So outputs are the measurable, tangible things that you will do. So for this Grow Wilder nursery project, we purchased, well, the aim was to improve the shop facilities in our Grow Wilder nursery. So the outputs were, we purchased a labelling machine, we procured equipment for the sales point. Oh, I've repeated myself there, but things like a tablet, contactless equipment, and we have a small shed there now, which acts as a sales booth. We installed a water harvesting and irrigation system. We trained 2 new staff and volunteers to use the new equipment. So these are, you know, these are the things that you do that then achieve your outcomes. So at that site, we've got some direct achievements. So we've got improved site efficiency, clear information for customers, a better and more professional shop experience, which directly relate to those outputs. And then there are other indirect outcomes and impacts from doing that piece of work. We'll get increased income from plant sales, and our staff and volunteers feel a lot more confident running the shop and talking to people that walk in to buy plants and so on. So I think it is useful to kind of set all this out when you're planning your project and your activities, because most funders will ask you to say what these things are. So before we move on, has anybody got any questions about that, or does anybody want to reflect on anything that's particular to their project? I mean, Emma, can I just ask you where you got your 2 grant pots from?
First of all, it wasn't me that applied for them.
Okay.
It was my colleague. But it's the sort of thing, the more of us who know how to do them, the better. She kind of gets, she's quite busy. And
Right,
obviously
okay.
it'd be good if there's someone else who can understand the process and to do it, hence me coming tonight. We got a grant of £250 from South Gloucestershire Council, whose
Okay,
land
yeah.
we actually, and we got 750 from the League of Friends of Thornbury, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a total of £1,000 in total for basically the funds were for to buy a tool store, to buy some tools, and to buy plants for the sensory garden.
Great.
And and I remember, I mean, I saw the actual grant form for the League of Friends one. We asked for more money, but they gave us 750. But yes, it was interesting to see the budget that we had to lay out for plants and how much Potsy the tool store was and where we'd got that price from. So I understand, obviously, giving them a budget, we haven't just made that figure up.
Yeah.
People have got to understand, you know, and how much plants cost, which is always a bit shocking, you know.
Well, that's a good point, actually, because this is why I like to start with the budgets, because it just filters through everything. But having the evidence is really important, which for smaller things they might be happy with if you do an internet search of prices for things. So that you haven't just picked that number out of the blue. But if it's a bigger item, sometimes you might need to get a company to provide a quote, or sometimes bigger funders like 3 quotes to make sure that you're providing value for money as well. So so you said that you were looking to put another application in. Would you mind sharing who that's to?
We haven't decided yet because we're just coming up with ideas. We'd like to apply for more funding for the rest of the sensory garden to complete it, to build a herb spiral, and then to create an area full of grasses. So there's 2 or 3 things. They will probably be next year now, but it's the sort of thing, it'd be worthwhile finding out who the funders, who we can apply for those types of ideas that we have. But there is some funding being available from our local council, Thornbury Town Council, in October. Now, I know that I've already spoken to the mayor, and he said, but if you apply in October, there is money available for your sort of project. But obviously, I need to put something together, and we need to decide as a group what that's going. First of all, what we're going to apply for, how much money do we want? So that's kind of what I've got in mind. But yeah, that's all. I know it's a bit hazy at the moment, and it might only be a small amount.
Yes.
But yeah, it's all really important.
Yes. So have you gone through that process already of outlining your where, what, how, why, and when, how much you need to get, how much you need to pay to do your work, and what the benefit of doing it will be? So you haven't.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, hence why coming on this course to kind of get more of an awareness, and then for me to be able to go back to the group and say, right, let's be a bit more definite about different things. Can we discuss, you know, what project are we going to apply for in October when the applications become available, and go from there. But yes, I just wanted to have a bit more background.
Okay. Well, I mean, this we're recording this, but also it can circulate this slide pack. So if you wanted to, you could almost use it a bit like a tick list. Have we done this? Have we done that? So just take it step by step to build your case for support, you know, and have we got everything we need in terms of additional documents, which I think probably you wouldn't need too much. Then there might be a time your project, you know, you come across a funder who does want a little bit more information. So we will look at a couple of examples later on, and just to kind of outline really how different all of these funding bodies are. Yeah, so I might just move on, but if anybody does have a question, please just stick your hand up.
I just had a very quick one. You mentioned about using kind of funder language and certain terms that you like. How do you know what words they want you to use?
Well, some of them, I mean, it's probably more like funders like Awards for All, for example, which is a lottery funder, and they've invested quite a lot of time and money in working out, you know, exactly what it is that they want to fund. So if you go on the Awards for All website, which I could share now, actually, that might be quite a good. I'm just going to stop sharing this, and then I will open up the Awards for All, which is quite a useful one to look at, and it's a great funding source for the kind of things that you're doing as well. So let me just, hopefully that's open. Here we go. So Awards for All, they used to be really explicit about what words they wanted you to use. So it was things like, you know, can you tell us how your project enhances the local community? So then they're almost telling you how they want you to set out your outcomes. You know, the local community is enhanced by the fact that we've got a sensory garden. Volunteers have, you know, get additional knowledge, training, and a feeling of a higher self-esteem. You know, so so they used to kind of set it out, but sometimes you can read through their information and you start to get little clues about what kind of language they would like from you. I think the examples I used were things like community cohesion. If they're asking you about that, then maybe use that kind of terminology, which might, I mean, I'm not saying completely do that, but if you can pick out a few things, because in some ways it's getting that balance between using, you know, that terminology, but also saying things in your own voice as well. Avoid using jargon, you know, say things plainly. You know, so it's that kind of thing. I mean, the Awards for All website's brilliant. You know, they kind of set out, it's very clear and it's not too long. You know, they set out what they're interested in at the top. You know, the funding size is here. And then you've got these tabs. So you know, it takes you through it every step of the way, which is different from some funders where you might not really have that information, which can be big, you know, which can be charitable trusts. Sometimes all you get on a charitable trust is that they like horticulture, or they like community projects, but they don't really say anything about what those are. So it comes back again to ring them up. If there's a phone number, ring them. If there's an email, get in touch, because they want to talk to people about their projects. They want projects to succeed. But with Awards for All, I mean, you can ring them up, but the website's so good that you probably would get, you know, it takes you through every step and you would probably get through it okay without needing to speak to a person. Sets out everything you need on there. Who can apply? So it lists all the jobs, the groups, did I say? Yeah, and the thing about exclusions is important. So it's very easy to get carried away with what they will fund and how close that fits to your project. But you have to be very careful that, you know, for some reason they don't fund your kind of a group, or you know, they might say they fund sort of growing projects but not trees or something like that. Just be double check what you're doing so you don't waste your time. Yeah, so there's lots of examples on there for the kind of projects that you can get funding for. I think they have a rolling application as well, and it takes a little while, but I think they try and respond to you within about 3 months. And they're also very explicit about what you can spend the money on, which and also what you can't spend the money on, which is all very helpful and easy to kind of navigate. Yeah, so I'll just stop sharing that a moment and we'll come back to the slides. Is there any questions at that point? Are we all okay? All right, I want to whiz through because I want to make sure, I want to hear from the boys in Bristol. I want to hear what they've been up to. So I just want to make sure we've got time for everything. I'll just go back to the slides a minute. So we've gone through all the do's. We've gone through an example, which is grow wilder. So there are some don'ts, which often are the opposite of the do's, to be honest. But things like don't assume the funder knows everything about your work. So avoid terminology that they're unlikely to understand. So a common example, actually, in the bids that I put out is biodiversity, which in the business, within the wildlife trusts and other similar organisations, we all know what that means. But actually, you know, trustees on a charitable trust or other funders, they might think, well, what actually does that mean? So if I'm going to that kind of a funder, I would just find a different way of explaining it, you know, call a spade a spade. And just, yeah, just try and be as clear as possible. Another budgety thing, be realistic about your costs. Don't underestimate it. You know, don't be shy, put it in there. And certainly bigger funders as well, they know how much things cost, so they would expect to see certain things in there. You know, for example, if you were going to a lottery funder, you know, they would want to see that maybe you had a little bit of cost in there for evaluation. And if it was a really big project, they would want to see that you would had a bit of contingency in there, or you know, they might even pay for overheads. A lot of smaller funders won't, so I'm imagining you wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't be relevant for you. Sounds really obvious. Don't misspell their name. And this came up because I was at a Meet the Funder event with a Bristol-based funder, and she said it's surprising how many people will submit a wonderful application, but there'll be something really basic that they've overlooked, and it just gives that slight sense of lack of care. So it's kind of make sure you get it proofread, you know, check all those details. Yeah, so don't be despondent if you get turned down. You know, I get turned down all the time. I'm used to the rejection, but also don't discard that funder. Keep them on your list, because it might be that at some point in the future they could fund you for a different thing, or they might change their criteria, which suddenly means that it's a good match again. Yeah, and again, which I touched on before, don't be too funding led. You know, make sure you keep faithful and true to what you want to do and what your project is, and don't start going off getting sidetracked because they've got money on offer for something in particular. Okay. Was there any questions on any of that? Okay. So let's have a quick look.
I don't have a question, but can I add something from my experience?
Yes. Oh, yes, please do.
So when I was at university, I've just graduated university before I got this job, and I set up an allotment growing group, and we applied for funding for that a few times through different avenues, some of which were through our own university. I think the biggest thing that surprised me personally was, so my budget ended up being £400 a year, which to me was huge because I've been doing everything without a budget prior to that. So £400 felt like this massive amount of money. But the biggest thing that I've learned in that process was that to funders, they can afford more a lot of the time. Yeah. And that what you need, you should ask for, otherwise you won't get it. So if you really need a larger amount of money, ask for more money. And the worst that's going to happen is either they'll reject you from that fund, or they'll offer you a lower amount. Can happen sometimes, but don't underestimate the value of the work or the things that you're doing. Don't put yourself down, because if you don't ask, you're never going to be able to reach those dreams that you have.
Yes, that actually reminds me of another really important point, which if you apply for some funding but they only give you part of it, you know, and sometimes that's okay, because if you've already got some money, when you go to that next funder, they can already see you've got some money there. The project's more likely to happen. It gives them confidence that that project's going to go ahead. So sometimes getting just a bit less than you ask for isn't always a disaster. It's, you know, it can lever in other funds and get other funders interested. So yeah, that's a really good point.
And I just had another thing that was talking about keywords and like words that funders are looking for. There are some things that funders will always like to see in there, and that's about health and well-being. What demographic is being engaged? Is it a demographic that isn't reached by things that are already in your area and things like that? So there'll be certain language that you yourself will know is current in the world right now. So the big one at the moment is COVID and post-COVID recovery and post-social isolation recovery and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. And it comes back again to what I was saying about your outcomes. So there are some direct outcomes that you will say, which are to do with your project. But, you know, if you do something in your community that's really brilliant, like you're all trying to do, that has massive benefits that you might not think of. You know, so people will learn skills because they'll come along and, you know, learn how to do gardening, or learn about, you know, how you manage trees or a mini orchard, you know, that sort of thing. But there's huge benefits for health and well-being. people are outside, they're socializing, you know, so it's all these things that you've just mentioned, Ria. So always think about, you know, beyond, you know, the immediate, you know, benefit that, you know, your project can bring. Even just somebody walking past, they will be uplifted to see that this work has gone on, and that suddenly the neighborhood's not looking quite so, you know, despairing. There's a bright spark there. It's all incredibly important if you can pick out those things. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Could have a quick look at a couple of examples. I really want to give the boys in Bristol a go, so I'm going to have a look at one, and then maybe we'll go to them so that they can tell you about their crowdfunder. So there's a funder called the Linnean Society, and they've got a local nature grant scheme. It's designed to provide young people with opportunities to take the lead on projects that involve local nature and to have their voices heard. It's a maximum award £1,000, and I don't know if a youth project is relevant to you, but it will illustrate certain things, having a quick look at it. Examples of things that they fund: so building a community garden, creating a nature walk, running an event about foraging. If you're interested in it, by the way, it's got a deadline of the 22nd of October. So they'll fund things like materials, events, expenses, direct staff costs. They won't fund overheads, general running costs, you know, a huge amount of refreshments that you might need for volunteers. But if you know, includes community groups, schools, small charities. It's quite a small fund, so they awarded £6,000 last year in 9 grants. It's quite a low chance of success as well. So that's 9 out of 65 applications, which, you know, it's about 14%. So yeah. And they have youth members on their decision-making panel. So they have an online form, which I could share, but one of the top tip to remember here is if you've got like a funder with an online form, is right at the beginning, check if it's something that you can complete, come out of and go back in, or if it needs to be done all in one go. I mean, I always do a Word document, to be honest, whichever way it is. I get all my information on there, then you can fiddle around with it. And then if you do need to sort of cut and paste it in all in one sitting, you know, you've got all that information there. I mean, we could have a quick look at their form, just so you can see what kind of thing you might. Right. Okay, so this is their application form. So they've got these assessment questions. The interesting thing about them is that they do give you a few clues, actually, when you go through the form. And this one does have to be done all in one sitting. So maybe if you come across one like this, is go into the form, note down all the questions and any clues that they're giving you before you start putting anything in, just so you know what information needs to be collected. Some online forms you can download a PDF of the questions or something like that, but some of them you don't. So they want contact details, they want some information about the group of young people, and again, they're sort of giving you some ideas about what information they're after. They want a project description, so you always have to provide that, whatever it is. So that's coming back to your planning, you know, your summary, that your outputs and outcomes, and just generally describing the activities and the benefits. Yeah, they pick that out here. So please outline who would benefit from this project and how much money you're requesting and a rough budget. So that's quite straightforward, and they do talk you through it. Yeah, so the pitfall of this one is that actually on the website, when you're looking at it, you kind of think, yeah, we do some stuff with young people, but the really important thing when you get into it and you go in the form is that actually it has to be led by young people, which is a bit of a difference. You can be doing something where you get some young people coming along and they do something, but it actually has to be co-designed by them. So again, it's coming back to that thing, read the small print, make sure you read the criteria very, very thoroughly. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's an example of one type of funding source. But there is another example I can show you, but I'd really like to hear from the boys in Bristol, because they've been running a crowdfunding campaign. So it'd be great to hear how you've been getting on and how you found that. I'm going to hand over to you now.
Right. First things first, I want to apologize. Krystian had to go. We had another meeting scheduled up as well, though. So he's representing boys in Bristol in a different way today. Yes, we're running a crowdfunding campaign for our Bristol Parks project. And it's hard, but it's good. Let's put it this way. We kind of step away from sort of putting application for like grants and different fundings, purely because at this very moment in time, we operated as individuals, and lots of grants and funding applications that's actually required to have either like sort of community group or like charitable organization, which we are not sure in sort of which category we actually like, or towards which we want to kind of aim. Hence, crowdfunding campaign is up and running. It's great, but it does take a lot of time, from like promotional purposes to reaching out to like different groups and organizations, asking for the support, as well as kind of promotional values, as well as statements that what we do is actually sort of legit for the public, not just like a couple of guys that decided to kind of run the project and see where it's going to take us and all that, though. Which we want to thank you to Emma. She's given us amazing support, as well as all Avon Wider Trust itself, though. Thank you so much, guys, for all the sort of resources that have been forwarded our way regarding how to get it done. It's our first crowdfunding, which is very nerve-wracking. We kind of like, when it's come to the outcome, we're not sure which direction is going to go, though, but we're happy that we actually started that, and we are happy that we got amazing feedback and support from people from the local communities, which we try to sort of reach out to on a daily basis, speak to them in person, as well as using our various social media channels to kind of promote the crowdfunding itself. We are happy to say we managed to get a coverage in a Bristol Life, as well as a Bristol Life magazine, which was very, very grateful and very, very big boost for our crowdfunding campaign for the project. As you normally do, you got a couple of people that kind of like had lots of different questions regarding why, what, and where, which we're always happy to answer, because our approach is just to basically try to give back to the community as much as we can. This community allowed us to grow and strive. Hence the project. We want to make sure that everybody's included. That's why we want to reach out to lots of different community groups and friends of parks, to kind of unite all the informations. Basically, the idea about the project is create a comprehensive hub with the list of like different parks in Bristol, different community gardens, as well as natural reserves, full of like informations about like sort of facilities in the future, like sort of local wildlife they'll be able to spot there, as well as sort of nature related stuff. Also, we are here to actually give the voice for like charitable organizations that, due to, for example, lack of resources, they're not able to promote themselves. We want to sort of unite and combine that within like under like one umbrella, be able to help different community groups actually to help them strive and let people know, the local community, about initiatives that they've got, amazing initiatives that they've got in place that people don't seem to be aware of. But regarding the crowdfunding campaign itself, there's lots of preparation. We've been handed over to lots of different people for proofreading for us. We're constantly making changes. We're constantly kind of updating the information, make sure that it's like nice and clear. It's the same with the grant applications, using a very simple language, so everybody be able to understand what's there and what we're doing this for, and gonna be able to who we want to support as well, though, which again, these be ready. Like if you ever sort of willing to do a crowdfunding, be ready. The crowdfunding campaign does start before the crowdfunding campaign is actually officially live. So reaching out to potential people that want to support your initiative, reaching out to different sort of media as well, those potentially asking for the coverage. So once the crowdfunding is actually up and running, the word is spread as quick as potentially can, because from our experience, we can see that the most of the donations are come either at the beginning of the project, of the campaign, or at the very end of the campaign, when people will realize it's like, oh right, cool, we do, like I want to support the cause itself and all that, which equals constant promotion. We're talking about like literally as a daily base sort of advertising. We use different sources of advertising from free advertising of the local groups to actually sort of paid advertising, for example, by using Google Ads. So again, as much as we want to raise the money, we put in money from our own sort of pocket just to be able to spin off. That we had to be ready for this by following the guidelines of like sort of crowdfunders, as well as to reaching out to people that had experience crowdfunding itself and that. So it's worth it, but it's a hard work, and be ready to spend endless amount of hours to spread the awareness and spread the word. Yeah, there's any questions?
Well, I'm going to share the screen now just so people can see your crowdfunding. Feel free
Yeah.
to ask questions. I'm just get it up so people can see. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I got a lovely video, kind of you guys were explaining kind of what it is and what you wanted to do with the project, and just amazing pictures. So if you want to get lost in the realm of amazing pictures of kind of Bristol Parks and everything that they do, I'll share this link. But yeah, is there anything you want to say about this, like in relation to the Crowdfunder website or anything?
We are trying to be as transparent as possible. So then there is no kind of sort of hidden agenda. We sort of to reduce the amount of questions, why, where, and what. So it's like clearly understanding for people. We mentioned about ourselves as well, though, so people can relate to kind of like what we've done in the past and what the idea is behind the project itself and why we doing what we're doing. It's a very good thing though to kind of put like a breakdown of sort of cost and a budget related to the crowdfunding, well, related to the your project. As you can see, we put a couple of like testimonials as well as like different quotes from people that we already approached before the project itself was actually a thing, just to kind of see what people think about the idea itself, though, which again had amazing positive feedback. That's why it gave us energy and sort of motivation just to keep pushing forward. All the images that you can see on the crowdfunding campaign were done by us, but we want the people from the community to get involved. That's why we're spreading things like hashtag Bristol Parks Project, so people can sort of tag their images and be featured on our social media, as well as for each dedicated website regarding the parks. Because there's over 200 different spaces, green spaces in Bristol, which we are aiming to sort of put in one place. At this very moment, we're focusing on a 29 different parks listed in the Bristol City Council website as a kind of like spin-off. And after that, we're going to be doing more and more dedicated website. The reason for each of the parks to have dedicated website, because for example, for the future reference, we might be in a position to sort of give out all of the work that we've done for regarding the websites to particular like sort of charity groups as well as our friends groups and all that, so they can kind of run it themselves in the way they feel fit. But the website itself will be constantly updating with all the information about the related activities, different park groups, as well as like sort of businesses that are supporting the actual cause itself when it's come to encouraging people to go back to the nature, reconnect them with the nature. By doing that, sort of boost their mental as well as physical well-being, because we are a perfect example of people that nature and parks give so much, which again we want to kind of give back to the community and sort of share our perspective. And all the images as well that will be available for free for everybody to download and to use and to print out, for example, for themselves if they want to have a bit of a park itself in their own house. And one of the ideas behind the project was, the inspiration was the fact that we used to work and in elderly care. We used to look after the people that, again, they done their positive bits and impact on Bristol, and they still got the cherished like photographs of the parks within sort of their rooms. And we want to create like a virtual walk as well, so you'll be able to visit the park regardless where you are, and find out about, again, facilities and features, and yeah, just enjoy being in the park without leaving the home if you're housebound, or encourage you to actually go to the park if you're able to physically visit the parks. But in the past, we had lots of people coming back to us within the feedback of it's an amazing idea, because it's a very hard thing to find accurate information about parks and green space in Bristol altogether, as well as like sort of nature reserves and like community gardens. They have to like scroll for ages. There's information is there, but it's spread across so many different platforms and different websites, which our aim is actually to unite all of that in one thing, which is bristolparks.co.uk.
Well, it's a fantastic project, and when you say it's quite hard work, I mean, are you doing you can do regular updates on Crowdfunder, can't you, that go to people that have already donated, and just regularly sort of bumping that all the time. But it's a fantastic project. It's a great crowdfunding site that you've put together. And it's something that anybody can set up, and then there are also some other organizations that will partner up with you. So an example of that is the Aviva Save Our Wild Isles. So they've partnered up with Crowdfunder. You can go on there, and if you have to put an application in, but if you are successful, often they will provide match funding as well. So I think I think it's something like if you're successful, you get £500 to start your project off, and then for every pound that you raise, they'll give you £2. So that's a really good. You're trying to do something, to get that match funding. So there are, and that's another thing. When I come back to the park funding, if you think, right, we're going to do a crowdfunder, but you also know that you've got an organisation that might be interested in giving you some money, you might be able to say, well, look, we're going to do a crowdfunder. Could you give us £500? And then when we do our crowdfunder, we can say up to £500, every pound that you give us will be matched, which is another way to get people to donate, because they'll think, oh, well, if I give £10, the charity will get, or the organisation or the group will get 20. So it's kind of using your prospect, your potential funders, to your advantage in that way.
One of the things that we came across that become quite tricky at the time, though, because there's, as we are aware of, lots of different organizations that they are supporting like a wildlife project, well, a community project, like regarding nature, reconnecting people with nature and all that. But the biggest problem and the biggest issue that we had is simply timing. Just purely because it's never perfect time to set up the crowdfunding campaign, and while we are reaching out to people and different organizations, at the same time we're pushing time, so then that simply didn't align. But we're always open to collaborate and look for different resources, as well as different ways to enhance the project itself, get people involved, from individuals to the groups, members, different friends groups as well. Basically, as much as it's our idea, we want to make sure that everybody can feed from it and everybody can actually involve themselves in the project itself. Again, if it's just from the spreading the awareness or potentially helping us out with promoting the project, because as much as we're promoting the project, we're promoting everybody that's got some sort of relation to the wildlife and nature itself. That's the bigger picture of it, just to be able to give back to the community and get community involved. So it's our idea. It's the project that we created is supported by us, but then at the same time, we want everybody to take over that and put their little 5 cents into the project itself, because we want to see what people want to see on the websites as well that we already created. If you follow bristolparks.co.uk, you'll be able to see a dedicated website for St. George's Park, which is done as a pilot website, so people can already see and visualize how the different ways will be able to look like. And again, we're always looking for the input from people from local community on improvements and what we can add to the website itself. So far, we've done everything from our own side, in a sense of taking pictures, traveling to different places, reaching out to the different communities, creating the website itself as well. Even the background thing, like doing the SEO for the website, just to make sure the website is not just there floating somewhere in the internet, but it's actually visible while you're typing in on Google things like Bristol Parks. So yeah, just enhance every single aspect of it, and we're always looking for people to join us in a bigger plans.
Yes.
No, that's amazing. Luke, did you have a question? I saw you maybe wanted to ask something.
I want to ask the boys in Bristol who they spoke to about crowdfunding, as in they said they spoke to some experienced crowdfunders before. So I didn't know if there was ones that they specifically spoke to.
So there's a couple of individuals that we came across while we are reaching out to different people. The members of Troopers Hill, friends of Troopers Hill. There's a lady called Ruth Sample. She's doing sound baths, and she's always been involved into community and engagement. And as well, she's got she actually been running the crowdfunding campaign for Woodlands on Blackford Road, which is just the bottom of Lacrosse Hall. She luckily for us, we managed to kind of get to know her before that, and she was willing to help us with sort of wording, as well as like the best approach and what to do in a what to put in a crowdfunding campaign, so it's just like purely transparent. And we know for a fact that she's always sort of looking for ways to collaborate with different people and give back something to the community and get the community together, though. So she'll be a good contact.
Yes, and I think it's worth saying that you know, there are, you know, I do fundraising for a living and have done for many years, but actually you're the experts in your area. You're the passionate people. You have your own local networks, you know, and it's just reaching out to people, helping each other, sharing what you can, just to kind of get these things off the ground. So I know Emma might be able to say more about this. As the Wildlife Champions Network develops, you know, there's this idea that there'll be peer support networks. So when it comes to funding, I'm not quite sure yet how that will work out. I mean, certainly if you have any questions or any comments about what we've spoken about tonight or what's on the website, I guess it's probably best to come to you in the first instance, Emma. But the idea hopefully is that, you know, as you develop your projects, you develop your funding bids, you know, there might be ways where you say, actually, I remember, you know, Luke over in South Bristol, he did something like that, and you can share your ideas and your experiences. But, you know, we'll always help where we can at the Wildlife Trust as well. There's a couple of other, the link to the Boys in Bristol site is on the PowerPoint thing, which we can circulate afterwards, and also the link to the Team Wilder page, which you're probably all aware of anyway, and all the, you know, you can access all the sort of blogs and the videos and the funding sources, but we'll try and keep that updated. But as I say, if you do have any feedback, it's the first time we've run a session like this. If you feel like, well, I didn't quite get that question answered, or if you remember something later, do get in touch, because, you know, we want to help you as much as we can. And I think probably the final thing I will say is thank you for what you're doing. You know, you're doing the good stuff out in your communities. It's brilliant. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Sam. I think that was so helpful to me as well, as someone who's never kind of written a funding bid before, just to go through the basic do's and don'ts and know where to start, because I think it can be really daunting knowing where to start with something as big as this. And also hearing from you about kind of that crowdfunding approach. I think it's nice that people have a alternative that they could explore if the funding bids aren't for you. But yeah, like Sam said, this project is led by you guys. So if there's things that come up and you feel like we haven't covered that, or you want specific contact in different places, we can try and get that if we can. So any final questions? I'm aware it's gone past 7, so I don't want to keep you too long. But are there any final things you wanted to ask?
I definitely just want to add one thing though, when it's come to like resources and again like crowdfunding as well as like funding applications, all that though, we want to say a big thank you to Emma as well as Avon Wildlife Trust and the Team Wilder and all the resources on the website. So we see that already, and we always follow this as well and all that. So please, like, thank you very much for encouraging us to actually go farther with the project and just make it alive.
No, that's amazing. Great. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.